Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Competitive Advantage Talk Series presented by the Craft Analytics Group. I'm Chris Tinsley. I'm a second-year student here at Sloan. It's my pleasure to introduce today's topic, the Professional Ennui League, Thriving in the Age of Digital Distraction. So just a word about logistics. This panel will go for 25 minutes, including 5 minutes of Q&A. And please refrain from asking questions until you have the microphone. There'll be one floating around. And with that, I'll hand it off to Matt Mayberry.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I am both humbled and honored to be back here speaking at MIT Sloan. I've served on panels in the past, but this is my first year giving a competitive advantage talk. I've attended these, like all of you, and I've watched many of them online. And I thought we'd do something a little bit fun and kind of turn this talk on its head a little bit. So I'm going to forego the kind of standard introduction of who I am, what I do, even though it says it right there on the screen, and what I'm going to talk about, which is also right here on the screen. And instead, I'm going to ask all of you to join me in a brief exercise. So if you will, take both of your hands and find a comfortable place for them. You can put them behind your back, fold them in your lap, rest them on the chair in front of you. Don't touch the person next to you, obviously. And when you've found that comfortable position, I'm going to ask that everybody close their eyes. And with your eyes closed, I want you to imagine one of two people. You can either imagine your favorite athlete, or you can imagine your least favorite athlete. Now, this can be across any sport: basketball, baseball, football, soccer, hockey. Since it's 2020, it can even be esports. And it can be at any league: professional, collegiate, amateur, intramural, even your local rec league. And when you have that athlete in your mind, I want you to imagine that they're hooked up to a gigantic control board full of buttons. And you're sitting behind that control board with the ability to push any one of those buttons. And this is where it gets fun. Every single one of those buttons correspond to a different aspect of your athlete's behavior. Push a button, and your athlete gets the recommended 8 hours of sleep every night. Push another button, and your athlete stays up all night playing Fortnite before a big game. Push a button, and your athlete stays in peak performing shape throughout their career. Push another button, and your athlete develops type 2 diabetes. Push a button, and your athlete never loses their self-confidence. Push another button, and your athlete has a debilitating mental health crisis. You can all open your eyes. Thank you for humoring me in this exercise. How many of you found that a little strange and a little dystopic, that you could sit and push somebody's buttons to change their behavior? Hopefully most of you. How many of you, if given the chance, would sit behind that board and push one of those buttons? That's surprising. Usually all the hands go up. So my name is Matt Mayberry. I'm a behavior designer, an artificial intelligence technologist, and for the last 10 years, my teams and I have pioneered the design, development, and deployment of the world's most advanced behavior change systems. Today, I'm going to explain to you how we got there, where we're going, the effect it's having on our athletes, and what you can do to play defense against people that want to push your buttons. But in order to get there, we're actually going to go back in time. And it's very fitting that we're here in Massachusetts because we're going to go to the start of my presentation. Nope, one more time. That's slide 28. There we go. We're actually going to go right here in Cambridge to Harvard in the 1930s, where we're going to meet this man. This is B.F. Skinner. He's the father of modern behaviorism. And B.F. Skinner had this wild theory. He wanted to know what man could make of man. And in order to test this theory, he had a very simple experiment. He took rats and pigeons, placed them in a cage, and taught them how to push a button. And every time the subject pushed the button, he gave him a treat. And from these findings, Skinner learned three things. One, if you give the subject a treat every time they push the button, they get tired of the treat. If you give the subject a treat too infrequently, they get tired of the behavior. But if you find that optimal timing as to when to give the subject that reward, you can keep them in a habit loop forever. That is, they'll keep pushing the button indefinitely. And at the time, this was one of the biggest findings in modern science. The world exploded. But people fell into one of two categories. People either saw this as the complete loss of free will, or they saw it as the peak performance of human achievement. We could finally push a button and be the person we've always wanted to be. Push a button, run a marathon. Push a button, lose weight. Push a button, win the lottery, something fun. But we never did much with this technology. People were too scared and it was too polarizing. And so we sat on this until a bunch of Skinner's grad students got wise and they packed up and they left Cambridge and they headed west. And they settled in a small town in southern Nevada. And here in this town, they built a new Skinner box. But instead of using rats and pigeons as subjects, they used humans. And we got this. Skinner promised us a world in which we could be happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And instead, the brightest minds of that generation built the slot machine, where nobody got happy, nobody got healthy, nobody got wealthy, and nobody got wise. And again, we sat on this technology, and nothing happened. And then again, all of Skinner's grad students and all of his disciples got wise to it, so they packed up again, and they headed west. This time, they settled in a small college town in Northern California. And right around this time, 4 interesting things happened. We started to develop hardware and technologies with always-on sensors that did active data collection 24/7, 365. Advancements in medicine and neuroscience gave us the best understanding of the brain that we had ever had. Cloud computing became fast, scalable, stupidly cheap. And extremely powerful artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms became open sourced and free. And so these young, enterprising grad students took these 4 technologies and they built a Skinner box. This time, 1,000,000 times more powerful than the one that Skinner developed right here in Massachusetts. And often when I get to this slide, people think this is what I'm talking about, that it's something straight out of the Matrix, that we went to some central processing point, we plugged our brains into a machine, we snapped our fingers, and we learned Kung Fu. But the Skinner box that these grad students invented, we didn't have to travel to visit. They came to us. We brought them into our cars, into our classrooms. They came into our homes and into our bedrooms. If you haven't figured it out by now, it's the modern cell phone. We gave them to our parents, to our friends, to our families, to our politicians, and to our children. The world's most advanced psychometric device ever created. And this device found its way into the hands of some other interesting people. Our NBA MVPs, our world champions, our future Hall of Famers, and even our Olympians. We brought it into the training room, into the locker room, and even onto the court in the middle of the game, in the crowning achievement of our athletic career. You must be from Philadelphia. And not only did we introduce one Skinner box into our life, we introduced hundreds of micro Skinner boxes and slot machines, constantly buzzing, constantly dinging, constantly fighting for our attention. And something miraculous did happen at this time. Skinner's thesis actually did come true. We did get to see what man could make of man, and this is what we made. We're fat, we're lazy, we're antisocial, we're unmotivated. We had an opportunity to accelerate humans into an era of thriving, and instead we accelerated ourselves into an age of convenience. We no longer push a button to get healthy, we push a button to get a high-caloric meal on demand. We don't push a button to feel better about ourselves, we push a button to get artificial likes. We don't push a button to feel good about our friends, we push a button to get a date on demand. And then something unique happened. It started to kill us. And now we're overwhelmingly dying from our own behaviors that we've caused. 100 years ago, we died from infectious diseases. Today, 7 out of the 10 things that kill humans are behavior-based. I know it's been a long 2 days, and you've heard a bunch of fun and interesting things over this week. If you only take one thing away from this conference, I want you to take these next 2 sentences I'm about to say. Fixing medical adherence is 10 times more valuable than curing lung cancer. Fixing diseases of behavior are 50 times more valuable than curing all cancers. We are at a crisis of our own behavior caused, this is an unfortunate transition, by our behavior. I often start my slide, or my presentation with this slide, and I talk about the fourth human evolution that we're experiencing. What's unique about this is when we think about crisis of behavior, and we think about people that are unhealthy or unwealthy or unwise, we often think about third world communities, or we think about low-income populations. But this is starting to affect people that everybody in this conference care about. It affects our athletes. And this fourth evolutionary phase is starting to look like this. How many of you, when you watch an NBA game and they show the pregame tunnel, have ever seen a player not walk in staring at their phone? It's pretty rare. How many times when they cut to the locker room and they show a player in front of their locker, how many of them are not looking at their phone? Almost none of them. And this problem isn't new. I've been giving this talk on and off for about 5 years, and the headlines continue to be published every 6 months about the same topic. As a matter of fact, last year, I stood on this stage here at Sloan and gave a similar presentation, only to have my words echoed by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver in the very room over. We're seeing not only a crisis of behavior, but a crisis of attention and a crisis of mental health in the league. And it's not just specific to the NBA, it's sports-wide. We like to think that our athletes have brains that look like this, singular focused. Basketball, their city, the game, their teammates. But that's not true. Most of their brains look like this. We have a finite number of hours in the day. We only get 24 hours to decide where to put our attention, and all of these factors are fighting for little bits of those attention at a time. The scariest part is the people that are the strongest are the ones that have the worst intentions. I'll tell you a funny, quick story. So I give this talk quite often to sports teams, and a couple months ago I had a player come up to me after this, and he said, "Oh, this is great what you're saying. I totally get it why I'm addicted. Half the time when I'm running down the court, all I'm thinking about is what I want to tweet that night after the game." And I've heard it from multiple players who think about, after they make a great play, what they want their highlight reel to say, what they want the Instagram caption to say, what they want to tweet out to the heckler in the second row. So I know this has been somewhat of a Debbie Downer presentation, as I've told you all how you're most likely going to die. But there is good news to this, I do promise. Hopefully you all make it out of here without perishing from heart disease. We can actually de-weaponize and use a lot of this technology to our advantage. This wouldn't be a competitive advantage talk if I didn't give you some sort of competitive advantage. I'm not going to teach you a quicker first step or something like that. I'm actually going to show you how you can play defense against some of these factors that are changing your behavior. So number one, on the left-hand side, if you remove notifications from your phone, you remove that Skinner box. So those little red dots that come up, those are engineered and designed by people like me to grab and steal your attention to get you to do behaviors that we want to do. The second one, remove the slot machine from your phone. How many people who have been to Las Vegas have ever sat in front of a slot machine that didn't make noise, or was in grayscale, or didn't buzz or ding? Nobody. Slot machines are designed to be exciting, and so are your phones. And the third is to engineer your environment. One of the smallest and quickest things you can do is put your phone in a safe space every night before you go to sleep. So don't put it next to your bedside or even in your bed with you. Put it outside the bedroom. And since we're at a sports conference, here are 3 things that you can do in the analog if you are a representative of a team or have players that are experiencing these problems. 1, you can build a healthy Skinner box using just a little tablet like that. Find a behavior that you want your players to do more often. When they do it, make a check mark, and then give your player a high five. Don't give them a high five every time they do it. Don't do it too infrequently, but find a good rhythm and cadence and try and keep that amount of time as small as possible between when the player does it and when you reward them. 2, competitors love competition. I worked with an NBA team to build a leaderboard like this, where we built an in-real-life leaderboard for good phone habits. So they were given a point every time they didn't use their phone in a team meeting, 5 points if they didn't use it on the training table, 10 points if they didn't use it at halftime, and you would be amazed how quickly multimillionaires want to earn worthless points. They fought and fought and fought all day long to be number 1 or number 2 on that list. Nobody wanted to be the last. And 3, and this is my favorite, it's a little hard to do, but it's probably the most effective. You can actually practice Wi-Fi degradation inside your arenas or training facilities. And what that is you purposely slow down the internet connection in places where players or staff members use their phone. And what that does is it causes a little bit of friction while they browse Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat. And it's just frustrating enough where they can kind of get the information that they want, but they grow so angry with it that they put it away. So currently I work for Thrive Global. Thrive Global is a performance and wellness startup that was started by Ariana Huffington with support from our peers here, Andre Iguodala and Kevin Durant. We're actively trying to end the stress and burnout epidemic that's plaguing us, whether it's through our phones or through our behaviors. This is a problem that is here now, and if we don't address it, it's only going to get worse. Before I go, which I'm well under time, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of recommended reading. Since I know almost all of us here are products of the American school system, you've probably read Brave New World. If you haven't, in 1930, Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World. It's a dystopic look at a society that uses the worst type of behavior change to control their population. What many people don't know is that shortly before his death, 30 years later, Huxley wrote a follow-up to Brave New World called The Island. Has anybody in here even heard of The Island? This is the only question I know I'm always going to get right. No one's ever heard of this book. So in The Island, Huxley imagines Brave New World, but the same technologies are used in a utopia and enhance human thriving. It's often cool to be anti-tech, to be anti-advancement, to be anti-artificial intelligence. And in this world of Facebook and YouTube and Brave New World and Black Mirror, we can look beyond that and imagine an island instead. I'm on a mission to build my own island, and I hope you all join me. Thank you. I'm going to leave the meme up here unless anybody has any problems with it. Actually, just kidding. Questions? Any questions? Thoughts, concerns? Hate mail? There's a microphone coming. Don't hold back, I've heard it all.
Thank you. One of the best speeches I've heard, or forums I've heard in the 2 days.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm a professor, so as an educator, I'm curious, outside of sports, have you also been talking to other organizations? Because not just sports, we see this problem across organizations, education, academia, everywhere.
We do. So from 2015 to 2019, I was COO of an artificial intelligence company called Boundless Mind, and we built the first behavioral layer of the internet. So we use the most advanced technologies in neuroscience and artificial intelligence and machine learning to build a behavior change platform that anybody could use. And so we sold this technology to health and wellness companies, pharmaceutical companies, corporations that wanted to change healthy behaviors. We were acquired last October by Thrive Global. And so this can be applied really to anywhere. I'm speaking about sports because we're at a sports conference. But some of the greatest behavior changes that you can see are in large populations. So whether it's a corporation of 100,000 people or a school system or an app that has 10 million users. Absolutely.
Hi. You mentioned mostly cell phones. What are your feelings about like TV watching in terms of like commercials? Because I feel like that's also not very great for attention span and those kind of things. And the other thing is, how do you feel about meditation to kind of fight some of these negative effects that you get from the cell phone use? Thanks.
It's a great question. Meditation is wonderful. If you can find time in your day for 5 or 10 minutes of mindfulness, I think it's like scientifically proven to make you a little bit better. It's not a practice that I personally have, but I know a lot of people that do have it, and there are studies that show that it is nice to have. I wouldn't be worried about televisions and advertisements. What I would start looking at are some of the newer technologies that are being applied to television watching. So we're entering a world of hyper-personalization where we know everything about a user, everything about a consumer almost before they do, and we're getting really, really good at predicting what that person would want. One of the core concepts of like behavioral engineering is that you want to engineer like wantness, like you almost want to tell somebody what to do. And I think media and content, and especially television, and we see this now in Netflix, is primed to really like get in there and keep you in this like endless loop of watching by always serving you the exact thing that you want in that moment. And that's alarming.
So, over here. Stand up. So one quick question is, I understand the tactics individually that we can do and why it's important for the athletes, for us to make these changes, but at the same time, we're also in the era of fan engagement, digital engagement, and so you have whole staffs and departments who are judged on, did this get enough likes, did this get enough whatever. So what is your thought on how we still accomplish and the things we're trying to do to be engaging in a way that is effective yet doesn't cause some of the problems that you're identifying?
Great question. And I think this is what's unique about the NBA. So the NBA's general idea is they want the players to always be on, and they always encourage their players to be on every social media to spread the gospel and be evangelists for the NBA. I think it's why you see so much more cell phone usage in the NBA. For your question, I think figuring out your unit economics and which things are actually driving the bottom line for your business makes sense. So can you actually see like tangible growth in revenue from likes? I don't know what you do. But figuring that out and then really optimizing for those things instead of just like a vanity metric of did somebody watch this, did somebody like this, did somebody comment? There's also a great movement of time well spent. So if you're asking somebody to engage in a device or with the screen, making sure that they're engaging on their own terms and terms that they've accepted to. So you're not forcing your content or forcing your app or forcing your algorithm on a person. They're specifically opting in that time frame to want to engage with whatever you're producing.
So I thought where you were going to go earlier was that with overstimulation, then it becomes desensitization. So I assumed maybe where you were going to head with this is that because we're so all overstimulated that we're not anymore going to be, in fact, stimulated by all this activity. We'll reach a point. So is that not where we're heading?
Correct. It's actually the opposite. Our brains are funny little machines. Our brains are adaptable, they're malleable, and they're programmable. And we are engineered and designed to crave these things. And so while we might not process what is coming in, and we may be desensitized to it, we're still actively seeking it because it feels good. I'm sure many of you have heard of dopamine. It's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll molecule that we have. There's no end to the amount of craving that we will get from that. And so even as these things get smarter and better and faster and stronger, now I sound like Daft Punk, you will not be desensitized. It'll just keep you in that same habit loop over and over and over again. And there are many people, many of my colleagues are being paid lots of money to make sure that happens. Anybody else?
You guys can hear me? All right, cool. So I gotta say, it's very specific compared to a lot of the other questions, but you talked about the degradation of Wi-Fi, like in the arenas and things like that, and maybe that works kind of in the professional sports environment, but I work in an office and I need internet. So I'm kind of curious as to, and honestly, once you even said that, I was ready to jump up on stage and fight you for it. So I guess my question is sort of, how do you balance the idea of, taking us away from that distraction without having us lose faith in like the tech that gets our jobs done and just kind of a frustrating work environment? Where's that balance?
Again, great question. So we form habits in our brain we do a behavior and then we get a reward, and that's what helps like spark a habit. And the faster that you can shrink that amount of time between executing the behavior and getting the reward, the better. So if you do the opposite, where you extend that period of time, you actually lose the desire and kind of lose the ability to form a habit. So in your case, there are tons of apps that will actually like put in little mindfulness screens or breathing screens and cause a little bit of friction in between what you want to do and then what you're actually expected to do. And it's not that it's going to slow down your workflow or anything, but it's going to kind of help reprogram. And I'm trying to be very careful with my language here. It'll help you, it'll assist in your wantingness to have a more mindful experience with your software or with your apps or with whatever you're doing. I can give you some recommendations if you find me afterwards. You're welcome. We're good? All right. Killer time, everybody. Thank you so much.